Welcome to Austin Stories. Today, OP attempts to take down the brown-noser boss in an interesting and brave way, and then the next OP just makes his work completely regret the decision they've made against him. If you're not in your car, buckle up because this is a wild ride today. And don't forget, all the videos are in podcast form. Search the Austin Stories podcast on your local provider or check the description for a link. Boss tries to give disciplinary action for working too hard, posted by Asian Clooney. Midway through my career, I found myself working for the most prominent private college in my state. I was in the IT department and was in charge of maintaining a few servers and all of the technology in the classrooms. Every summer, we would receive our budget for the year, and part of the budget that I managed was spent mostly on upgrading the audio-video presentation systems in the classrooms, and most of that work had to take place during the summer. This is fine normally, but our college administration had created a ticking time bomb for me a few years before. They had decided to spend about $100,000 on a few classrooms, but did not allocate any money in our budget to replace the equipment when it would eventually fail. I had been there for 5 years, and now that equipment was starting to fail. Increasing our budget was not an option, despite faculty growing to depend on the equipment in these spaces. I was left to figure out how to make the same budget replace all of the equipment in those spaces, as well as the normal set of classrooms that would need to be upgraded elsewhere. Fine, I was up for the challenge. I had to simplify and purchase more value brand of equipment and do extra work to cut corners. A couple of weeks of shipping delays for the majority of the equipment saw me with roughly 1 month to rip out, replace, rewire, and configure about 15 classrooms, as well as update and test all of the existing classrooms within about a month before the semester began. Realizing the amount of work ahead of me, I began working. I came in every day of the week for 28 days straight, working 8 to 10 hours to ensure that when that semester began, the professors would have working equipment. I was salary, so I didn't have to clock in. This gave me the freedom of schedule to work as little or as much as required. I worked myself sick and was literally sick at the end of the 28 days. My supervisor was a guy that we recently hired. Let's call him Gus. Near the beginning of the semester, while testing equipment, I realized that the audio driver in a common model of computer that we have in the classrooms was corrupted. Investigating it, I realized that the computer manufacturer had corrupted drivers on their web server where we downloaded it from. I asked my supervisor, who was in charge of managing the image deployment server, to rebuild the image with a non-corrupt version of the driver that I'd provided him, and he said that he would. I swing by the next day and I asked him if he had completed the rebuild. He had not. I tell him that I really need it as the semester loomed closer and closer, and he tells me he'll work on it. Next day, nothing. Day after that, nothing. Finally, he figures it out and I continue my work. He must have not liked being pressured, and perhaps the perception that he was incompetent, must have gotten to him. He decides to power trip and call me into his office and ask why I was working so much. I explained the administrative oversight a few years prior, shipping delays, cheaper equipment, extra required work, and his delaying of a working image. I tell him, hey look, I came in day after day after day asking for that rebuilt image. Each time that I said day, I am poking my finger straight down on the edge of his desk, enough that it makes a sound to emphasize that those delays hurt the work that I was doing. He wanted to find some personal failing that he could pull out of some disciplinary action around. I gave him none. Eventually, he ran out of ideas and I left his office, not thinking much of it. Gus, however, was a brown-noser of the highest order. He would follow our IT director like a puppy. He joined a band with my IT director, so my work situation was not exactly fair. The semester began and not a single issue in all of the classrooms was reported. I was proud of the work that I was able to complete given the challenges. The second day of the semester, my IT director calls me into his office. There, Gus is sitting beside him and they both want to talk to me. I don't like the looks of this. My IT director starts asking me about why I was working so much. I explained to him, as I did Gus, the various factors that made this summer's work extra challenging. This destroyed any valid criticism they could muster. Gus goes on to say that he innocently inquired about my work and that I became violent, talking about the gesture that I made on his desk, illustrating his failure to do his work in a timely manner. I demonstrate exactly what I did on the IT director's desk to show how ridiculous of a claim that it was. My IT director wanted to exert his authority, and they would not stop until they had something to discipline me with. Nothing I would say would change the result. I was to be in trouble for whatever transgression they imagined up in this meeting. I make sure to point out how long it took Gus to do the small task that I depended on, knowing that I could have completed it in about an hour. He was incompetent. My IT director then alludes to the fact that I should respect Gus more, as he is my supervisor. Screw it, I think to myself. I then tell my director, it is as if Justin Bieber was trying to teach you about music theory. It's only going to tick you off. This sudden, sharp, and, in my opinion, hilarious comparison was too funny. Both Gus and my IT director immediately laughed their butts off, even though Gus was the subject of this insult. Once they had stopped laughing, my IT director put on a more serious tone. He says that I could manage my time better despite the unique circumstances of this summer's work. His voice gets really soft and slow while he's talking to me now. This is a trick he forgot that he told me that he uses in arguments to make the other person seem like they're out of control. It is condescending, as if spoken to as a child, and now he is using it on me. He tells me that he wants me to take some time management class. Also, to take a couple of days off and think about it. I just want you to think about it. However, he is going to need my keys and badge. Cue malicious compliance. At this point, he has provided me enough evidence that this is not a job that I want to stay at. The absurdity of working so hard and for 28 days straight on salary with no extra pay and to be rewarded with a disciplinary action was too much. That, in that moment, I had thought about it. Without saying anything, I hand over my badge. I took all of the many keys off of my keyring and set them on his desk. I have thought about it, I tell him in the exact soft and condescending tone he used with me. And you can keep the keys and the badge, I told him with the biggest wry smile on my face. I then walk to my office. He follows me and I notice his eyes had become glassy, as if he was hurt by the situation unfolding before him. He expected me to capitulate and accept his punishment for a job well done. He kept saying, I just want you to think about, with each time becoming increasingly desperate. And I kept repeating, I have thought about it. He disappears back into his office with his little minion, Gus, to discuss damage control. I quickly pen an email to all my other coworkers, letting them know that I was leaving and that I enjoyed working with them. I had to work quick, as I knew they would shut down all of my accounts very quickly. I packed up my personal effects and left. Gus and my IT director offered to help me, trying to walk back the situation with some small gesture of goodwill, but I was gone. I had been there for 5 years, but I was willing to walk away the moment that he tried to treat me so poorly. I found out a little later that the week before I left, a programmer that we hired had left after he treated her poorly too. I was not aware of the reason that she left when she did, but our office manager shared that she quit abruptly like me without anything lined up given his behavior. About a year later, I hear from the office manager that the IT director had left. Rumor is, he was primarily working for another company while in his office at the college, effectively double dipping or making money for 2 jobs while only doing 1. He had been caught doing so and was warned by the administration to stop. He opted to leave instead of owning up to his own dubious behavior. My only regret is that I didn't leave that job sooner. An update. Many comments have mentioned that I did this to myself and I gave them free work, or that I should have not worked myself so hard. I chose to. That was never the issue. That my director discounted the challenges I faced and insisted that it was personal failing was beyond me. I never complained to my director or supervisor about the situation until they tried to discipline me and I had to unpack the circumstances for them. When I started the job, several rooms and event spaces were non-functional and had fallen into disrepair. Issues existed across all of the classrooms. I worked there for 1.5 years to fix all of these issues and return them to working order. Once I had implemented more permanent fixes and solutions, we went from 4 to 5 reported issues a day to a few every couple of weeks. I eventually implemented turnkey automated systems that made my job very easy. At this point, I started assisting Gus in the help desk, and he was the help desk manager. I worked with him and another support coworker to push down the help desk tickets. No one asked me to do this, and I worked very well with them. I helped Gus with issues that he could not fix, and he was appreciative. This was not required of me, but I helped because I had locked down and automated all of my systems. But Gus was lazy, took smoke breaks all day, and made student workers who knew very little, but more than him, try to fix the issues. I did not have a problem with him until I had to depend on him. Years of doing this work had shown me that addressing the issues while campus was empty took a lot less total time, as I had to schedule my work around classes and so on. Though it was stressful, fielding all of the complaints and getting additional pressure from my director if classrooms were not working would be worse, stress-wise. Once the semester began, I was fine. Had I remained, I would have taken time off and coasted through the semester like previous summers. All of that extra work would have been balanced by a lot of days where I took a more relaxed pace and worked no extra hours for months. Some comments mentioned that I should have used this as a feedback mechanism to management. That is a private sector mentality. Academia works through grants and endowments. Just as I had entered the college to find whole rooms offline, the administration would have let those rooms break down and let the faculty deal with it. I worked so hard because I cared about the work that I did, the faculty I supported, and how that reflected on me. One last thing. When I started working there, I tried a more communicative relationship with my director. Eventually, they got annoyed and left me with no direction. I had to determine my own projects and schedule unless something came down from administration that required our department. Directors in colleges are more focused on high visibility projects and padding their resumes. Attention is paid only when problems arise. Oh, OP, this is a ton to take in because you work so hard to get this working because you care about the students, you care about the faculty. You don't want them to have equipment that doesn't work, that impedes their learning process, that makes it harder on the teachers. You want this to be a good learning experience for the kids, and that is awesome that you want to do that. And it is a lot of work that you did, that is so much, and ideally, in a perfect world, without Karens in academia like this, they would recognize that. They would say, OP, you worked for 28 straight days, 8 to 10 hours. Thank you so much. Here is an award. Here is a bonus, a raise, something to show that we are appreciative of your work. And you know what? Even on top of that, they should have said, hey man, you've been working so hard. You need a break. You need to rest. please, if they're concerned about your health at all, which they're not. And then Gus, brown-nosing, going up to the IT director, getting close, being in the band that they're playing in. He just goes from a troublemaker in the past to a super troublemaker in the present, and then OP stands his ground and says, I quit after all of this bullcrap and gaslighting by the director. You know what, OP? You found out that the other person quit too. You didn't actually put up with any of that gaslighting crap, and you came out ahead on top, I bet you, getting out of this place that did not care for you or respect your time, worth, and value. Way to go, OP, on standing up for yourself and what's right. I got back at them big time. Posted by St. Harrop. I worked for 2 years at a tile store. I handled customers as well as worked in the warehouse. Not to brag, but for those 2 years, I worked the earliest shift that no one wanted, because you had to receive the daily truck and put the tile orders away by hand at 6 in the morning. But I also said that I would work every Saturday as well. Now, I didn't do this because I hated myself and wanted to suffer. It was because I wanted the outside sales job. The outside salesman that got the job entered right after I started, and we hit it off quickly. We will call him Joe. Joe confided in me that he had no plans to continue this job after about a year or so. So from the get-go, I said I wanted that job, and I worked my butt off to get it. Pulling shifts no one wanted, doing jobs no one would do, and doing things that were definitely not part of my job description. This included doing a lot of the outside sales job. I would take over when Joe would call out or just needed help. He came to rely on me and gave me part of his job. I saw this as a type of internship and thought it would pay off. Fast forward 2 years. Joe tells me that he is about to put his 2 weeks in and to get my resume together. He puts in his 2 weeks notice and I immediately put my application in. I got the backing from both Joe and the branch manager to get the job and did a pretty good job on the interview. I knew that I was pretty much a shoo-in for the job. I had seniority and it never caused a problem in my time there. I had a very good relationship with the contractors that I sold to, and I knew all of them by name. The main part of the outside sales job was working with the contractors, so I felt confident, to say the least, that I had what the company was looking for. 2 other employees applied as well. An ex-convict who had anger problems that will come up later. We'll call him Bob, and a recently hired woman who had no experience in tile. We'll call her Ann. The only other job she had ever done was as a secretary, and she was currently just helping customers with selections. Both of them were older than me. I was in my early 20s and both of them in the 30s. A couple of days after that, I got a call from HR telling me I didn't get the job. Instead, they wanted to give it to Ann. I won't lie, I thought I misheard or that it was a prank at first. The only reason HR would give me as to why they passed me up for the position was, "You're just too good of a worker and valuable at your position for us to lose you. You do such a good job and are so responsible. We would hate to lose that." So, because I'm good at my job, you won't hire me for another one with more responsibilities? Yep, but to show how much we appreciate you, we are giving you a $1 raise. Do I still get my yearly dollar raise on top of this in a couple months? Well, no. Think of this as we are giving it to you 2 months early. I was fuming for a couple of days. Their excuse didn't make sense, and I had a feeling that I was being discriminated against due to my age. However, I was set upon making a point that they chose the wrong person that came up with a plan. Because I was so good at my job, I didn't get the outside sales job. So if I was bad at my job, maybe they would promote me then. Let me rephrase. I wasn't bad at my job, but I told my manager that I no longer would work the morning shift, would no longer be there on Saturdays, would no longer do the worst jobs, and would no longer be doing any jobs that fell outside of my description, including the outside sales job that I had been helping with. Ann goes out for a couple of weeks for training and personal time. during which things are already starting to fall apart. My manager asked me to fill in for Anne just while she's away. He understands why I'm doing what I am, but asked as a personal favor. I agree, and things begin to get back to where they were before. Anne comes back, and I resume my firm stand. Anytime something was supposed to be done by the outside sales position that I normally did, I would send it her way. Customers, problems, heavy to lift things, and other favors that I used to do for Joe, I refused to do for her. It gave me a little relief to see her running everywhere trying to get everything done. She only asked me once to help her, to which I just told her that it wasn't my job. Those first couple of weeks, things were a little rough as most of the jobs were left over from when Joe and I were running things. So most of the problems came from the daily grind. But the weeks that followed were chaotic to say the least. Items came in late, jobs were missing or unordered, contractors didn't understand where their materials were. Mind you, these guys get paid per job. So every day their material isn't there is another day they don't work or get paid. So when their materials don't come in, their workers who are paid hourly are getting paid for no reason at all. My favorite one is when she accidentally sent an order across the country, costing the company thousands as we lost money on that job. As things were starting to turn into the dumpster fire I knew it would, HR called me in to talk about my attitude. "We have heard your attitude as of late. It doesn't sound like you are being a team player." "Well, I'm sorry to hear that. Have I said something hurtful to someone?" "No." Maybe did I hurt somebody's feelings unintentionally?" "No." "Oh, okay, so I just don't understand what attitude you're talking about then." "We have received word that you aren't being as helpful as you were to Joe as you are now to Anne." "Well, you see, I am far too valuable at my current job. I can't possibly detract away from that." They immediately saw that they had made a mistake in giving me that reason as to why they didn't hire me. They then told me that I needed to be more of a team player and would pay me an additional $1 an hour when the yearly raise came around in 2 months. I told them that it wasn't my job to do what they were asking, and if they wanted me to do that, that they would have to negotiate my contract. They told me that they would need to discuss it and to reconsider being a team player. I did not relent, and they weren't interested in renegotiating my contract. Well, 2 months after Anne got the job and things went to heck, she stepped down. Again, I put my resume in, as did Bob. Now, remember how I said that he had a slight anger issue? Well, that came to a head just before Anne put her 2-week notice in. Bob threatened a contractor. The contractor was a real piece of work, but that doesn't excuse the fact that Bob threatened the guy. Regardless, with this now happening and Anne putting in her 2 weeks, I couldn't see how they couldn't hire me. It was me or someone who threatened customers. I once again go through the process, but this time I play my cards close to my chest. They didn't know that after Anne was first chosen over me, I started to look for a new job. Just as this interview process was going on, a company called me back and offered me an outside sales job at their company. It was lower pay than my current company's, but they didn't need to know that. They also did not need to know that I accepted the position and told them I needed to finish my 2 weeks. I wasn't going to give them my 2 weeks though. I was going to make it look like it was a competition and try to string it for those 2 weeks. The company offered me the outside sales job and nearly begged me to take it. They apologized for making the bad decision of picking Anne over me and told me that they would love to have me in the position. Now, let the fun begin. I promptly told them that I would need to think about this as their competitor had just offered me that same job for a higher pay. The look on their faces was to die for. I pretended that it was a back and forth for 2 weeks, which conveniently went over Ann's quitting date and my new job's starting date. They got anxious because they now didn't have anyone for the job and finally gave me a final offer. I promptly shot them down and told them that I didn't want to work for a company that treats their hardworking employees like crap. They can sleep in the bed they've made. And then I told them that I was starting the next day at the other company. I have never been so happy. This is actually, OP, a huge lesson, because you hear about places that say, oh, we're not going to promote you because you do so dang good at your job. It makes the company sense in their mind. They're like, oh, this person is so good at this position. If they leave, we're going to have somebody that's not so good taking their place, despite the fact that OP would have been the shining star for this other outside sales job. I mean, seriously, I'm sorry that OP learned the hard way, which really sucks. But the thing that OP did do was keep the cards to the chest, as he said, and just know the way to handle this, what to say, what to do, and then execute properly 2 times. 2 times on this, for the first application and the second application. Because I would be fuming too if I just worked my butt off and tried to do all this extra stuff to get up there, and they just take advantage of it. They took advantage of you doing all this extra non-job description stuff and just said, oh, he's doing it for free. It seems fine. We're just going to string him on along, just till he decides to not do it anymore. But free labor, right? No. OP, good job standing up for what you believe in and yourself and nailing it. And I hope your new job is a whole heck of a lot better than this one. But by the sounds of it, that's not a hard thing to be. Good job, OP. Fire me if I don't take your terrible pay cut. Okay then. Click the video on your screen so you don't miss this awesome story, and I'll see you there.